Blog Talk Radio.
To the Piccalillian Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. I am your host, JB, the Fantasy Phenom, and with me tonight is Steve Wynn, the Professor. Professor, football is here.
Football is here. I'm tired of being stuck on that island making radios out of coconuts. I am ready for some NFL action, and heck, it's already started. We are on a Wednesday night game, a rare Wednesday night game for the NFL. Nothing much happening in it so far, except for Jason Witten being active, but we'll get to that when we get into the games for the week. How do you feel, JB? You happy to have the NFL back in your life?
Oh my God, I couldn't wait. You know, believe it or not, we had a draft. It's a group of guys. We've been doing this football league for I'm going to say about 8-9 years now, and we just couldn't agree on a date to actually all get together and do our draft. We normally reserve it for the last weekend before football, but a lot of us had things to do, things going on. We started this draft Thursday night. It was online. It was a slow draft, and we finished it today about 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Wow.
So it's just been one of those things. So, I've had fantasy football. We might have had 2 or 3 real drafts that we sat down and pounded out in a couple hours. This one's been lingering since last Thursday. You know, we get it done under the wire, and here we are. You know, we got a game plan, and and I've got action. I've got the Giants defense, and I've got Victor Cruz. So, I'm happy.
That's pretty good. It's probably among the best plays you could have in this game. The Giants passing game and the Giants defense. So
yeah, I'm feeling pretty good.
Excellent.
Sure.
Okay. So what do we got to start today?
Well, why don't we go over a couple of let's go over some injuries that people may have to look out for this weekend, guys they may want to consider holding off getting into their starting lineup, and things of this sort. Like Marshawn Lynch experienced some back spasms. It's so uncertain right now if he's going to play. If not, look for Robert Turbin, the rookie, to take the backup role and play in his absence.
Yeah, I've seen this report about these back spasms, and Lynch has had his troubles, and I'm a little curious as to whether these are really back spasms or if he's done something that has earned him the wrath of the coaching staff out there. But either way, Robert Turbin has got a very similar skill set. He's the kind of guy that can slip right in there. In fact, I write an article in the beginning of the season called Next Week's Waiver Wire Today, where I try and look into the future. And I had Turbin on my list at number 2 on that report. Guys that I think will do well, that'll be on everybody's waiver wire picks next week. So watch for Turbin to have a nice day Sunday.
Oh, okay. Well, there's some fantasy advice coming straight from the lips of the Professor to your ears. And, if he's out there on your waiver wire, you may want to give the guy a peek, especially if it looks like he's going to play this weekend. Another rookie that may be playing this weekend, Trent Richardson. If active, it's his spotlight, huh?
Yeah, he's the number 1. They've named him their starting running back. That was never in doubt. Montario Hardesty is not the guy that's going to steal that job. Richardson's been a little dinged up all the way through camp. He slipped from, late first, early second round down to the middle of the second round, late second round in a lot of the drafts. Everybody's excited to see him go. They compare him to Adrian Peterson as far as his running ability. If he is Adrian Peterson for this decade, he's a great guy to own, and I hope that the Browns keep him out until he is 100%, because I'd hate to see him do something that would hurt his career this early in it.
Yeah, sure. You don't want to see a young kid, exactly finish his career before it ever starts. And if he's got a skill set like that, I'm sure they want him to be healthy on the field too, because I guess, if he's not 100%, he can't do all those special things that he's capable of doing. So
right.
Look for him to, when he does hit the field, I'm sure he'll be 100%, or I don't think they'd throw him out there. Another guy that was in question for tonight would have been Hakeem Nicks, but that question's already been answered for us because I've seen him drop a ball already. So he's in play.
Yeah, they had him on the sheet as questionable, and everybody was expecting him to be out there. So when you saw him lining up, a lot of people breathed a little easier because they did spend a high draft pick on him.
Oh, sure. I'm sure a lot of people grabbed him in the late first round, if not early second round. So he was definitely a top 5 receiver. I'm sure he was on a lot of people's radar, this past draft season. Absolutely. Another guy that people will be holding their breath and waiting to see what's going to happen will be the aforementioned Adrian Peterson. We were doing a Trent Richardson comparison, but it looks like he'll play in week 1, but it looks to be limited. He's going to be sharing the role with Gerhart.
Yeah, you have to watch the injury report right up to game time. Luckily, Minnesota plays at 1:00, so if you see him as active at 12:30, you might want to think about swapping him out for Toby Gerhart. If Adrian Peterson's active, they're going to get him working in this game. Jacksonville's run defense is no great shakes. So, and it could happen that they get way ahead in this game. It's one of the few games that Minnesota's got to feel real good about. But
sure.
If Peterson's active, get him in your lineup.
All right. Ryan Matthews has not been cleared yet for contact. I guess look for Ronnie Brown to be stealing the carries this weekend.
Yeah, Ronnie Brown is the backup. They've also got a rookie down there. I'm blanking on his name at this particular moment, but Ronnie Brown is nothing to get excited about. If you've drafted somebody on your bench, start them over Ronnie Brown, but you're probably looking at another 2 or 3 weeks before you see Ryan Matthews back in the lineup.
Yeah, I wonder if Ronnie Brown will be doing any of that whatever you want to call it, offense, the direct snaps and all those crazy trickery. I don't know if they're planning on using him that way, but it's always fun when you see some of those plays in the NFL. I call them college plays.
Yeah, well, the Dolphins love to do them. Norv Turner, that's not really in his playbook, and frankly, I'm sort of a Chargers fan. Always have been, back to the late '70s, back to the Eric Coryell era, and the Powder Blues and Dan Fouts. I'm hoping that the Chargers have a terrible season this year because I want them to fire Norv Turner and move on to a new era. So,
well, that could very well happen from what they're saying. It's I guess it's kind of do or die for him. I think like with them winning the division is a must for him to keep his job, and probably going to have to win a playoff game. Other than that, I mean, they're really on their last leg with him. I think their patience has worn thin.
Yeah, but I've heard that before, and sadly, I'm an Eagles fan too, where they're always everybody's always on thin ice in Philadelphia as well, but nothing ever changes. So I'm hoping the Chargers haven't caught that disease. So.
And finally, speaking of the Chargers, Vincent Brown. It looks like he's down and out for a little bit, huh?
Yeah, he is on the brand new 6-week IR. The injured reserve has a new wrinkle in 2012. They can bring you off of the injured reserve. Each team can do it once, and that's the type that they put Vincent Brown on. Opens the door for some rookies and some younger talent out there, and puts a lot of pressure on Antonio Gates and Malcolm Floyd. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out, but I think some of those guys may be very popular tomorrow or not tomorrow. I'm so excited with football on. I think it's Sunday.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hear you.
Popular waiver wire picks on Monday.
Sure, absolutely. And speaking of Knicks, I just saw him actually catch a ball. So one dropped, one caught. Good for him. He's in action. Just a couple of other things. A couple of players that are, suspended that may, affect if people had drafted them. Just remember, to make sure Kenny Britt is not in your lineup for week 1. Mike LaSure, you can keep off your starting lineups for at least 2 weeks. When he gets back, I think that's going to be Detroit needs something to, some sort of running game, and he may be he may be an answer for a little while. I don't know. Detroit hasn't been able to seem to run the ball for years.
Well, you remember I mentioned my next week's waiver wire today?
Sure.
Kellen Williams, or Keelan Williams, however you pronounce it, their third-string guy, is going to get the start this week. And Detroit has they've got a real pushover game. So this guy could be running the ball a lot to run out the clock. I wouldn't be surprised to see him put up a 100-yard day in garbage time. So he'll be added by a lot of people. So if you've got your Rashard Mendenhall and you need a quick fix, Kellen Williams might be the guy for you, JB.
All right. Hey, good to hear. I guess it really isn't going to affect too many fantasy people unless you're in an independent defense type league. But you also have to remember there's still a lot of those Saints defensive players from the Bounty Bowl and whatever, the Watergate tapes that they found, and these guys are still not playing until Nixon clears them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a long wait for some of those guys, and all that means is the Saints offense is going to have to find a fifth gear after they were in fourth gear all last year, and who knows, maybe Drew Brees will throw for 6,000 without a defense.
Sure. Professor, I'm going to take this time. We're going to pay a few of our bills. We're going to take a word from our sponsors, and then when we get back, let's get into what this show is all about. We'll take our listeners around the league. We'll break down game by game, talking about who to start, who to sit, and and we can retouch up on those injuries in case people missed the first segment of the show. But we'll be back in 2 minutes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the other side.
Are you good at fantasy football? Are you used to winning your fantasy league? Well, now put your fantasy skills and savvy to the ultimate test by playing against the rest of the world with Fantasy Football Evolution. Fantasy Football Evolution is the first ever worldwide fantasy football competition. The winner gets $25,000. Go to nextgenffe.com to sign up today. The only way to know if you're the best is to play against the best. Fantasy Football Evolution at nextgenffe.com.
This fantasy football season, be sure to check out Power Play Fantasy Sports, featuring free and pay-to-play fantasy football games with huge cash prizes. Power Play Fantasy Sports is your home for the 2012 fantasy football season. Visit the website PowerPlayFantasySports.com and use the promo code KICK to receive 20% off your entry in the Power Player Fantasy Football League, featuring a $5,000 grand prize. Again, that's promo code KICK. If you know football, this is the game for you. Visit Power Play Fantasy Sports. Don't let your fantasy issues become a reality. Fantasy Judgment is the premier dispute resolution service for all fantasy sports leagues. Led by attorney Michael Stein, the Supreme Court of Fantasy Judgment will resolve any and all issues or conflicts that arise in fantasy leagues. This includes disputed trades, collusion, abuse of power by league commissioners, lineup and roster errors, draft issues, score discrepancies, and interpretation of league rules. We alleviate the burden for league commissioners and allow everyone to focus on winning their leagues rather than arguing over disputes. Visit www.fantasyjudgment.com.
Hey fantasy fans, how often does one or two injuries ruin your chances of winning your fantasy league? If you're anything like me, too often. What if I told you that I found a fantasy game that could help you avoid that? You can win cash prizes daily. FantasyPlayerExchange.com is a new fantasy game that allows you to make a team every single day. You can choose from players in multiple sports. Every day you have a chance to win. Unlike traditional fantasy games, FantasyPlayerExchange.com allows you to make your own team every day. Sign up today and enter to win a free trip to Las Vegas. FantasyPlayerExchange.com. Invest in your daily fantasy.
And we are back to the Piccadilly Inn Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. I am your host, JB, the Fantasy Phenom, and with me is the Professor. Professor, let's get into the meat of the show. This is what we're going to be doing for the next, 16 weeks, and this is what I love to talk about. Let's start breaking down some of these games. A game that I think is going to be interesting for a lot of people to watch this weekend, Green Bay and the 49ers.
Yeah, that's a tough draw if you drafted Aaron Rodgers or the Green Bay receivers in Week 1, going out to San Francisco and playing against one of the best pass defenses in the league. So I'm sorry, that game is in Green Bay, but it's still
sure
a great defense out there, and Yeah, I would downgrade, and I did downgrade. I put the stats together on the site today for quarterbacks and tight ends and running backs. And I don't have Aaron Rodgers as the number one quarterback this week. Not that I'm telling anybody to sit him, but I got him as number 6 because he's playing a great defense. They're not going to be able to air it out. And you still have to start him. He's still in the top 12. You still have to start Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings. And you probably can get away with starting Cedric Benson and Jermichael Finley. But you have to temper your expectations, I guess.
Well, and not to mention their run defense was undisputably number 1 last year. The Niners only allowed, I think, something like 70 yards a game, and they only allowed 3 touchdowns on the ground the entire season. So, you're right. They're definitely going up against a very stout defense. They've got a lot of, that core guys. They're all coming back. They're all going to be hitting hard, and it's amazing. You take a team like, you've got Aaron Rodgers and all the weapons around him. Like, you mentioned a few, but with Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, Jermichael Finley, James Jones, Donald Driver, you can't even forget Randall Cobb. I mean, if you got a pair of hands on that team and you're capable of running, Aaron Rodgers is going to find you a way to get you the ball. I mean, that offense is it's fun to watch. It's awesome. It's what the league has kind of evolved into, this pass-happy league, and with all the rules that they've made to keep these quarterbacks standing upright, they're just taking full advantage of everything the league's offering them, and they're just exploiting people through the air.
Yeah, the Packers were the second highest scoring team in the league last week, but I think you're dreaming if you're expecting a 30-point game out of them. They can still take San Francisco, but I would expect a 17-14, maybe 21-17 type of outing. And, that's a fine day for the Packers and a fine day for the fans, but certainly short of what people might be expecting for Aaron Rodgers.
Well, we've talked about the Packers side of the ball. Is there anybody that you like on the Frisco side of the ball? I mean, has Alex Smith piqued your interest in any way? Is Frank Gore the Frank Gore of old? Is Brandon Jacobs going to be the goal line guy? Kendall Hunter in the mix? I mean, there's the rushing game there seems to be a little bit up in the air. And they're still juggling receivers. I mean, it seems like every year you turn around and they've got a different host of receivers. They've had, with Tenjin and with Mario Manningham, and they're just, I don't know. It seems like a team that's constantly evolving. They're looking for that, big wide receiver stud, and I'm not so sure they found one yet.
I agree. I don't know that they've found him yet, but Jim Harbaugh he's a great coach, and there's a reason that team improved as dramatically as they did last year. You have to take a wait-and-see approach with the Niners this week. Green Bay's defense, they're middle of the pack in both categories. I think they're probably rated a little higher last year because so many teams had to throw the ball up so much to catch up to them. But Alex Smith will get his. I think Vernon Davis will get you a touchdown if you start him at tight end. I don't know who to talk about from the receiving corps. I mean, Michael Crabtree is ridiculously fast. A.J. Jenkins is the rookie out there. It looks like he might be the number 2 possibly. We won't know until we see that first offensive snap. You've got Smith in reserve on your bench. Don't start him. You've got those receivers. If you have to start one as a flex or a third receiver, I won't fault you for it, but I wouldn't expect too much more than 70 or 80 yards, and that's about it. Vernon Davis, though, still top half of the starters at tight end, so get him into your game. And if you have the San Francisco defense, do not be scared by that Green Bay offense. San Francisco's D is that good. You start them anyway.
Okay. Well, we've got a lot of games to cover, and we've got about 40 more minutes to do it. So why don't we start, running through some of these games. We've got this Dallas Giants game in progress. I mean, it's too late for us to give anybody any starter set advice here. So next on the list, Colts and the Bears. Anybody you like in this game?
I like everybody on the Bears side of the ball. The Colts defense they're still rebuilding, and they're rebuilding the offense first. So expect them to be in a lot of shootouts. Every single Chicago offensive player that you own, the receivers, the running back, the quarterback, even Jay Cutler, if you drafted him to be part of a committee and your other guy is, down in that neck of the woods too, you might want to start Jay Cutler this week. So all lights are green for the Chicago Bears offensive players. You definitely play the Bears D against this rookie quarterback. Rookie quarterbacks make mistakes. I'll let you start on the Indy side of the ball. I don't want to keep talking. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. There's not a heck of a lot there to like. I guess I couldn't suggest actually starting a Colt this weekend. I doubt anybody picked Andrew Luck to be their starter, and possibly a Reggie Wayne. If you feel that they're going to be from behind and they're going to be throwing it out, he's probably going to be their best offensive weapon.
Yeah, I agree. If you've got Reggie Wayne as a low-end running back 2, or even as your wide receiver 2, or even as your wide receiver 3, you can be sure that Andrew Luck will find him, and maybe even get a touchdown. He hasn't gotten that level of familiarity with anybody else except for Kobe Fleener, who he came up from the college ranks with. Fleener's a long shot. If you drafted him and you don't have anybody else, cross your fingers and enjoy the game. But,
sure.
Wayne's really the only mortal lock starter on there, and even then he's a wide receiver 3.
Sure. All right, next off to Eagles at Browns. Sort of the same type of thing. I like everybody on the Eagles side of the ball. You've got to start Vic, you got to start McCoy, Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, hell, even Brent Selleck's going to be, he's going to be in the mix this weekend. So, on one side, you've got a lot of guys. If you've drafted any of these people, they're all worth a start. Then you go to the Brown side, and not so much.
Well, you got to start Trent Richardson. It looks like they're going to make him the centerpiece of their offense. But really, nobody's going. You can't know what Brandon Weeden's going to do in game situation at NFL speed until you've seen him play. Drawing the Philly defense is a tough draw because they've really solidified their line and their linebackers, and they already had great cornerbacks. So it is a much improved group. Really, the weakness of that team is against the run, and the strength of the Browns is the run. So that's the only play I can see from the Cleveland side of that game.
Yeah, they do have that. They have a really big receiver in Greg Little, ironically. But he may catch some balls. Like maybe if you're in a league where you have to start 3 wide receivers, and and he's on your team, he may be. But other than that, there's not really much to say about the Browns offense and starting them against that type of defense.
I've got Greg Little as my 5th wide receiver. My 4th wide receiver is injured. And I'm not even considering putting Little into the lineup. Not against those quarterbacks in Philly.
There you go.
That's a tough draw. So.
Next we have New England at Tennessee. Again, I'll let you start because again, this is an interesting game, and I think there's a lot of starts on both sides here.
Yeah, the Titans' defense is among the worst against the pass, and the New England's offense is among the best when they're passing the ball. In fact, their running backs. Well, I'll get to them in a second. Start Tom Brady. Start Wes Welker. Start both of the tight ends. And here's my long shot pick of the week. Somebody that's probably a wide receiver 2 or 3 on your team, Brandon Lloyd. He's playing the Randy Moss role. He's got McDaniels back as the offensive coordinator, guy who produced Randy Moss's big season up in New England. I'm expecting big things out of him. So really it's all systems go for New England, and don't touch the Titans' D if you drafted them.
Isn't it kind of ironic? You get a talent like Brandon Lloyd and a guy who can stretch the field, make all the catches, do all those things, and here we are talking about him possibly being the 4th receiving option on this team.
Well, he may be the 4th receiving option as far as people are aware of on September 4th or September 5th today. I think on September 9th it's going to be a different story, and once people see him in a game and catching balls from somebody that's not Sam Bradford, for instance, I think they'll really get an eye opener. The guy was great back in Denver, so I expect him to be a really big surprise.
And then for Tennessee, I don't think, quarterback. I can't recommend starting a quarterback for Tennessee. Chris Johnson, of course, is a start. He's, supposedly back in form. He's going to be putting up 2,010 type numbers. Let's hope so. A lot of people drafted him in the first round. He probably was, anywhere from a 6th to a 9th overall pick in most drafts. So a lot of people, big expectations from him. There's no way you can sit him no matter who they're playing. And then the receiving. Yeah, and then the receiving core over there is still a mess. With Britt, thank God he'll be back in week 2. I guess they're going to be, depending on Nate Washington. He's the tenured player on the team, so I guess they're going to be looking to his experience, and he's going to play a role probably all year long. Other than that, again, not a heck of a lot I can say about the Tennessee this week.
Yeah, I have high hopes for Chris Johnson this year, and I think New England's a great place to start. He's facing, it's a weak defense. They've always been weak against the run. They let almost 120 yards and almost a touchdown per game to their opponents last year, and they did not get better on the defensive side of the ball. So, expect good things out of Johnson. If you got to roll the dice with one of their receivers, I suppose I can't tell you not to, but don't.
Sure.
is my advice. Even if you feel you have to, look for somebody with a little bit more upside.
I'm going to run through one more game real quick here before our next commercial break, and that's going to be Atlanta at Kansas City. Now, I love Matt Ryan this year. I have high hopes for him. I drafted him in a couple of my leagues, and I'm really hoping that he comes through the way I hope he comes through. The receivers over there are just ridiculous. Roddy White, Julio Jones, I got Tony Gonzalez at tight end. Again, all of those aforementioned guys, they're all starts. If you have any of them, get them out there. The running game, I don't know. I want to hear what you have to say about their running game, and what do you think this weekend?
The Falcons' running game, really, the Chiefs were in the bottom 5 in almost every defensive category. So whoever's playing against them, that's an easy start. Michael Turner is still the man. I love Jacquizz Rodgers as a sleeper this year. I think over the course of the year he's going to come on. He's a more LaShawn McCoy type player out of the backfield, whereas Turner is more of a little bit of a wrecking ball, low to the ground wrecking ball.
A bruiser.
Wrecking ball nonetheless, yeah. So get Turner in there. I wouldn't start Rodgers just yet, but the Chiefs' defense, they're a long way away from being good. So go for the Falcons' running game in Turner, and I'm with you on all the passing options down there. Start Gonzalez, both receivers, and Ryan, and be happy on Monday.
Sure. Now for Kansas City, anything over here getting you overly excited other than the running game? Are you looking towards Matt Castle? Are you looking? Well, I guess Dwayne Bowe. If you have him, you drafted him to play, so you're definitely starting Dwayne Bowe. And
Dwayne Bowe is a good play even against a decent defense, which is what the Atlanta team boasts. They're middle of the pack. They're not great, but they're not terrible either. Kansas City's other receiving options, Tony Malikai is a nice play this year, and really he's probably the second receiving option after Bowe. And
sure.
A lot of people, after him being out with an ACL tear last year, you kind of missed the boat on how talented he is. So I'm curious to see if he's still as talented as he was in the preseason last year. But he was a very exciting option in the preseason last year. And he's been solid this preseason. So an interesting play. I wouldn't start either one of these defenses if you own either of them. I doubt too many people do.
Sure. All right. Well, when we get back, we'll pick up with the Jaguars and the Minnesota game, and we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be right back.
This fantasy football season, be sure to check out Power Play Fantasy Sports, featuring free and pay-to-play fantasy football games with huge cash prizes. Power Play Fantasy Sports is your home for the 2012 fantasy football season. Visit the website powerplayfantasysports.com and use the promo code KICK to receive 20% off your entry in the Power Player Fantasy Football League, featuring a $5,000 grand prize. Again, that's promo code KICK. If you know football, this is the game for you. Visit powerplayfantasysports.com today.
Are you good at fantasy football? Are you used to winning your fantasy league? Well, now put your fantasy skills and savvy to the ultimate test by playing against the rest of the world with Fantasy Football Evolution. Fantasy Football Evolution is the first ever worldwide fantasy football competition. The winner gets $25 grand. Go to nextgenffe.com to sign up today. The only way to know if you're the best is to play against the best. Fantasy Football Evolution.
Don't let your fantasy issues become a reality. Fantasy Judgment is the premier dispute resolution service for all fantasy sports leagues. Led by attorney Michael Stein, the Supreme Court of Fantasy Judgment will resolve any and all issues or conflicts that arise in fantasy leagues. This includes disputed trades, collusion, abuse of power by league commissioners, lineup and roster errors, draft issues, score discrepancies, and interpretation of league rules. We alleviate the burden for league commissioners and allow everyone to focus on winning their leagues rather than arguing over disputes. Visit www.fantasyjudgment.com.
Hey fantasy fans, how often does one or two injuries ruin your chances of winning your fantasy league? If you're anything like me, too often. What if I told you that I found a fantasy game that could help you avoid that? You can win cash prizes daily. FantasyPlayerExchange.com is a new fantasy game that allows you to make a team every single day. You can choose from players in multiple sports. Every day you have a chance to win. Unlike traditional fantasy games, FantasyPlayerExchange.com allows you to make your own team every day. Sign up today and enter to win a free trip to Las Vegas. FantasyPlayerExchange.com. Invest in your daily fantasy.
And we are back. Welcome back to the Piccadilly Inn Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. I am your host, JB, the Fantasy Phenom, and with me is the Professor. Professor, we've covered a good portion of the 1 o'clock schedule for this upcoming Sunday, and we're going to pick up where we left off. But
I do want to say, anybody that's a little confused by the name change, we are now the Piccadilly Inn Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. We come out of South Jersey. This place has got the best wings, scallop, shrimp, buffalo style, everything in South Jersey. So check them out in Chemung, New Jersey, if you're ever in South Jersey, if you listen to us nationwide.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you listen to us nationwide, fly on out. Come on out and check out their wings. They're that good. I don't care if you're coming from California, man. You know, you make your way to the East Coast, you want to check out Atlantic City, you're going to have to swing by and check this place out. Wonderful thing they do. Oh, well, let's get into the Jacksonville, Minnesota game. Actually, I'm gonna hand this off to you right from the get because there's been a lot of controversy surrounding the Jacksonville Jaguars this off season, and I'm interested to see what your take on it is.
Well, Jacksonville's that's probably the easiest comment you could ask me for, and that's avoid them. If you've got Rashard Jennings and you waited a long time, so you don't have another rushing option, I guess you play him because Minnesota's rush defense is not great. But man, you just have to you got to avoid him. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's not a player on that team that I would start until Maurice Jones-Drew gets himself back up to speed. So avoid. At least in the I was going to say at least in the rushing game, but the passing game too. It is Blaine Gabbert. I've named a draft disease after this guy for Justin Blackmon and Lauren Robinson, and you can't touch them because they have Blaine Gabbert disease. So until we see that he's an NFL quarterback, nobody to touch on the black and teal side of that game.
Okay.
So,
and then sure.
Go ahead. The Minnesota side of the ball is definitely a lot more interesting. Go ahead.
Oh, without a doubt. Christian Ponder really seems to be, coming into his own. He's looked very poised starting at the end of last year. He really started coming into his own a little bit, but he's had a very strong, preseason. They like what they've seen out of him out of camp, and I can expect, I don't know if he's going to reach top 10 type guy numbers. He may, but I could see him if you're in a 12-man league and he's on your team by the end of the year, he may be the guy you're starting. If you took him as like a committee type of guy, he could be the guy spending most of the time on your roster this year. Absolutely.
Yeah, he seems to have figured it out. You can't ask for better tools as a quarterback than Adrian Peterson and Percy Harvin, and he's also got tight end Kyle Rudolph, and the number 2 guy, the guy who looks like is going to be number 2 as the season goes on, is Jerome Simpson. He's another guy that's returning from suspension, but when he gets back, I think that he's a good play as well. So get Harvin, get Peterson or Toby Gerhart into the game. And if you drafted Kyle Rudolph as your rookie sensation at tight end, I'd play him this week. The Jaguars' defense is not very good. They have a deceptively good ranking on the pass defense because nobody had to throw the ball against them. They were always ahead in games against the Jaguars. So play those guys. I think that's enough said there. Just watch the the injury report on Sunday morning and see if you should be starting Adrian Peterson if he's active or Toby Gerhart if he's not.
All right. And then on to one of the most explosive offenses in all the league, and that's going to be Washington at New Orleans this weekend. And I'll tell you what, that New Orleans offense, there's another one. If you've drafted a New Orleans player, it's a start. It's a must start almost every week. They can move the ball. They're going to score lots of points, and that's fantasy gold, or fantasy black and gold, should I say. Is there anybody?
Well, you know what? The Redskins' rushing defense and their passing defense are both middle of the pack. So it's not like it's a real strong matchup play for the Saints. You have to have a little bit of concern. Of course, if you drafted these guys, you drafted all of them relatively high, except the running back committee, multi-headed monster. But if you've got Breeze, play him. If you've got Colston or Lance Moore, play him. If you've got Jimmy Graham, for God's sake, play him. I've been telling people to draft him in the first round all preseason. But don't expect a blowout. The Saints have a lot of easy matchups later in the season. The Redskins aren't one of those easy matchups. They are still decent on the defensive side of the ball.
Oh, it's still the NFC East, and they just play a hard-nosed type of football. Anybody in that division, So yeah, when you play a team from the NFC East or the AFC North, expect to get punched in the mouth.
Yes.
So
yes.
absolutely.
Now on the Washington side of the ball is very interesting, and I'm going to hit their running game first before we get to the big.
Well, if you've got it figured out, I'm all ears, man, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there in fantasy land listening that if you've got the solution to the running game, I'm listening.
I've got the solution to the Washington Redskins running game. If you drafted Roy Helu, Evan Royster is the stud this week. If you were smart enough to outsmart the system and take both Evan Royster and Roy Helu, then you definitely have to expect Alfred Morris to be the man this week. So basically, it's whoever you don't have, because Mike Shanahan hates you, and he hates all of us.
Absolutely.
In the football world. So stay away from the Washington running game. The Washington passing game, however, this is a great opportunity. If you drafted Robert Griffin, play him, because the New Orleans Saints defense is not great at all. They are missing players all over the place, and Griffin has some talent, and he can run the ball too. So this is a great opportunity for him to come into the league, show what he's got. His team will likely be playing from behind, so expect a lot of chucking the ball down the field. And if you pick the right receiver in Washington, you could be in for a happy day too. Most people think that it is Pierre Garçon. That is the smart play. The long shot there is Leonard Hankerson, who is a big and speedy second-year player. So I'm very curious to see how that shakes out. But if you want a hint, I drafted Henderson in a couple of leagues as my late round lottery ticket. So that's how I think that's going to go. But we'll see this weekend.
Yeah, and Fred Davis is probably a must-start here if you drafted him as a tight end. But other than that, yeah, I think that pretty much sums up the Washington side. Next, we've got the interstate battle, the battle for New York. We've got the Buffalo Bills at the New York Jets.
Well, I'm going to go on the record here. I can't honestly
find a more boring game this weekend?
No, I can't recommend. Well, I'll get to that, I believe. I grew up in South Jersey. Our AFC game back in the days before cable was always the Jets, and the Jets always stunk, and that has taught me, because I came of age after the Namath years, that has taught me to hate the Jets over the years, and they've never let me down. They're on the TV an awful lot here in the Mid-Atlantic states on the East Coast, and they are a team that I think is going to implode. I can't honestly recommend a single player from the Jets offense as a start this week against the Bills. The Bills' defense has improved, and they've improved against the run, they've improved against the pass, and they were middle of the pack last year. So they're a team that's getting better, and they were pretty good. I had the Bills having a nice year this year, and I really don't see much on the Jets side of the ball.
And for the Bills, I guess if Ryan Fitzpatrick could be a start, especially in a 2-quarterback league, or if for any other reason, but he's a possible start. Fred Jackson, I would say, is a must start. Stevie Johnson is pretty much a must start. C.J. Spiller, maybe in some deeper leagues, maybe as a flex position, but expect him. He's going to get his touches this year.
Yeah, I agree. I do like the running backs up there. I like C.J. Spiller to come on as the year goes on, but Fred Jackson is a solid start.
Absolutely. All right, so that was an uninteresting one. How about the St. Louis Rams at the Detroit Lions?
You know what? If you drafted Lions players, this is why you drafted them, because, the Rams defense is not good. The passing D actually ended the season with good stats because nobody had to pass against them. Their rushing defense was terrible. So whoever's running the ball for the Lions, expect them to have a good day. And that appears to be Kevin Smith right now, but that's another one you have to watch the injury report right after game time. But, man, if you've got Titus Young, Brandon Pettigrew, what's that other guy's name? They call him Megatron. Oh, yeah, Calvin Johnson, the number one wide receiver in the land this year. You might want to get that guy into the game this week. He might have a shot at doing something. When we did up the stats earlier this week, it's not often that I'll give somebody a projection over 120 yards of receiving.
Wow.
And I've got him over 120 yards and a touchdown. I really wouldn't be surprised at all if he had 140 and 2 touchdowns, but I get laughed out of projection school if I make those kind of predictions. And of course, the guy chucking the ball to all these juicy targets, Matthew Stafford, he's a must-start. He's the play of the week.
Absolutely.
To be honest, because they don't really know what they're doing on the ground. He may have to just dump it out to Brandon Pettigrew every third play and have that sub in as their running game. So he's going to be off to a great start. They're going to eviscerate the Rams. The Rams are in Detroit. Needless to say, don't start the Rams defense if you drafted them. But definitely do start the Lions defense. They are an improved squad, and they get one of the biggest cupcake offenses in the league. So.
And I think really the only start here for the Rams, the only start here for the Rams this week is Steven Jackson, and that's all that really needs to be said. There's nobody else that I don't see us recommending that you have to get in your lineup this week.
No, I agree. Jackson's the only lock. The outside chance you have is GTP, garbage time production, out of the Rams, and I think we'll be saying that a lot with that team. They've got the other Steve Smith. And they've got Danny Amendola. But really, you've got to have a thin receiver core if you're starting one of those guys. Maybe if you need him as a flex or you're playing a 4-receiver league. But there's a shot those guys have upside because the Rams are going to be behind early, and they're going to get stomped on. Yep. This is the most uneven matchup in Week 1, in my opinion. And the Lions are the only team that I'm
predicting
predicting over 30 points.
Now to the biggest uneven matchup in Week 1. We have two teams going in opposite directions in my mind. You have the Miami Dolphins traveling out to Texas to play the Houston Texans.
You know, just when I get the opportunity to say something like I said about the Rams, I have to be reminded. That
there is the Miami Dolphins.
Miami. I think the Rams are the worst team in football this year. Although the Chiefs and the Browns are giving them a run for their money, I do think the Dolphins are moving in the right direction, but they traded away one of their better defensive players. That's almost an admission from Joe Philbin that he has thrown in the towel on this season. So Houston's got a great offense. They've got a good defense. I start the defense. I start every skill position player from Joel Dreesen, and Lestar Jean. There's a guy whose name you haven't heard all preseason, but he is the number 2 guy down there against the Miami team, and with a fragile, shall we say, Andre Johnson. I expect them to go to Lester Jean a lot more once they have this game put away and showcase some of their secondary talent. And Matt Schaub is almost a must-start, even though you probably picked him as the number 2 guy in a committee. It's a good day. And who's that running back down there?
Oh.
The other number 1 guy.
Little guy named Arian Foster. Yeah, he's going to have a field day.
Game. You know what? You can almost start Ben Tate. For as much as I think the Texans will be ahead in this game and go to some of their second-string guys. So,
well, I got one for you here, Professor.
Houston resident, yes.
I actually have Schaub and Cutler as a committee that I wound up with in one of my leagues. So, who gets the nod this weekend, Schaub or Cutler?
That is a great question, because I have them in one of my leagues too, and it's Schaub this week.
Okay.
They've got more opportunity to do some interesting things. I have a hard time saying that there's somebody better than Matt Forte at catching the ball out of the backfield, but it is Arian Foster. So
sure.
You'll even get some score there out of Arian Foster's talent. So yeah, I think it's Schaub, but you know what? It's a good problem to have this week.
Absolutely. And then back to the other side, with Miami, the only start possibly would be, Reggie Bush, Devon Best being the number 1 receiver there. I can't recommend you starting him this week. Maybe they may have some matchups during the year that you may use on bye-week type fill-in things, but he's never going to be a number 1 type receiver unless they really blow us away and show us something this year.
Their receivers are poor. This is just to get Tannehill up to speed this year. You Miami fans, you can wait for that last unbeaten team to lose. You can pop the cork on your champagne and remember 1973. We're not going to have a lot that's going to make you happy, Miami fans. Sorry. All year long.
Well,
so who do we have up next?
Actually, we have to pay some bills. We're going to take a quick word from our sponsors. We're going to come back, and we've got about 5 more teams that we got to get through in the next 12 minutes or so to wrap up Week 1 in football. So we'll be back in 2 minutes and get everybody up to speed.
This fantasy football season, be sure to check out Power Play Fantasy Sports, featuring free and pay-to-play fantasy football games with huge cash prizes. Power Play Fantasy Sports is your home for the 2012 fantasy football season. Visit the website powerplayfantasysports.com and use the promo code KICK to receive 20% off your entry in the Power Player Fantasy Football League, featuring a $5,000 grand prize. Again, that's promo code KICK. If you know football, this is the game for you. Visit PowerPlayFantasySports.com today.
Are you good at fantasy football? Are you used to winning your fantasy league? Well, now put your fantasy skills and savvy to the ultimate test by playing against the rest of the world with Fantasy Football Evolution. Fantasy Football Evolution is the first ever worldwide fantasy football competition. The winner gets $25 grand. Go to nextgenffe.com to sign up today. The only way to know if you're the best is to play against the best. Fantasy Football Evolution. at nextgenffe.com.
Don't let your fantasy issues become a reality. Fantasy Judgment is the premier dispute resolution service for all fantasy sports leagues. Led by attorney Michael Stein, the Supreme Court of Fantasy Judgment will resolve any and all issues or conflicts that arise in fantasy leagues. This includes disputed trades, collusion, abuse of power by league commissioners, lineup and roster errors, draft issues, score discrepancies, and interpretation of league rules. We alleviate the burden for league commissioners and allow everyone to focus on winning their leagues rather than arguing over disputes. Visit www.fantasyjudgment.com.
Hey fantasy fans, how often does one or two injuries ruin your chances of winning your fantasy league? If you're anything like me, too often. What if I told you that I found a fantasy game that could help you avoid that? You can win cash prizes daily. FantasyPlayerExchange.com is a new fantasy game that allows you to make a team every single day. You can choose from players in multiple sports. Every day you have a chance to win. Unlike traditional fantasy games, FantasyPlayerExchange.com allows you to make your own team every day. Sign up today and enter to win a free trip to Las Vegas. FantasyPlayerExchange.com. Invest in your daily fantasy.
And welcome back to the Piccadilly Inn Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. As always, I am your host, JB, the Fantasy Phenom, and with me is the Professor. All right, Professor, we're cracking down. We've got about 5 more games to cover, and we've officially kicked off Week 1. Well, I guess the NFL beat us to that with this little game they've got going on, this barn burner of 3-0. The Giants are ahead of Dallas, although Dallas is in the red zone.
Well, I'm pretty happy with that.
They're in the end zone.
There we go. Who scored that touchdown as I flip over to it here?
Well, it was a toss from Romo to, I think it was Ogletree.
Yeah, wow. That's got to make the Des Bryant owners out there a little PO'd. So,
oh, you think, huh?
Yeah. Okay, well, that's good. Tony Romo adds to his 138-yard day with a touchdown. So we're still in the first half. It's early. But,
in its infancy.
Yeah, you got to be disappointed if you're playing guys from either one of these teams at the low scoring going on here. So
sure.
Anyway, let's get back to Sunday's games because everybody's already made their decisions on who to start in these two.
Okay. Well, how about Seattle at Arizona?
Okay. Well, this is an easy one. If you've got Arizona players, don't start any of them. You have to start Larry Fitzgerald. I know you picked him as the number 3 or number 5 wide receiver in your draft. You might have even gone as high as number 2. You have to play your studs. Everybody says it doesn't matter who's throwing in the ball. Guess what? It matters.
Sure.
John Skelton has got an arm, but he's inaccurate. Kevin Cobb, it doesn't have an arm, but, man, he can nail you on those 5-yard outs and those slants across the middle. So they have the options. Having Skelton is definitely better for Larry Fitzgerald, but there's nothing in the rushing game. There's nothing else in the passing game. Stay away and hold your nose while you deal with Larry Fitzgerald for the remainder of the year.
And real quick, do you like anybody from Seattle this weekend outside of Marshawn Lynch if he plays?
Well, I don't think he's going to play. I'm pretty sure that's a done deal this week, and I do like the rookie Turbin. I do like I like Russell Wilson. I like Russell Wilson an awful lot, actually, and I think that he has a chance to be this year's Cam Newton. So, the Seattle defense is a little stouter than you would expect. Their receivers are coming off injuries and surgeries, but Russell Wilson will get some on the ground. He'll have a good amount in the air. So, he's got some interest. Really, there's nobody else. I couldn't start any of those receivers.
Okay. Well, and speaking of Cam Newton, how about Carolina at Tampa Bay?
Now, that is a good game. I think Tampa Bay is on the rebound. That's a divisional matchup. Of course, you have to play Cam Newton. You drafted him 4th or 5th overall. You got to get him into the game. Steve Smith is dealing with a foot injury, so he's a little bit of a question mark for this game. So there are some questions there, but even if it isn't Cam Newton and the receivers, the rushing offense for Carolina is great. The problem is, who are you going to
every
choose?
week?
Will it be Jonathan Stewart? Will it be D'Angelo Williams? Will Mike Tolbert vulture their touchdown rushes at the 1 yard line, it's tough. You know who I like in this game? I like Brandon LaFell as a guy that probably didn't get drafted or got drafted late. If Steve Smith is out, he's the primary target, and that's not a bad target to have. He had some very nice weeks last year when he was, catching the ball from Cam Newton. I think he's an interesting play this week.
Well, and I think I'm one restraining order shy of never being allowed back in Florida again after Josh Freeman and what we went through last year. I picked him up in like 3 leagues. I thought he was going to be the second coming. I loved what he did during his rookie venture. I was so high on him. I had him across the board last year, and he did absolutely nothing for me. It pains me to say I really think he could actually have a bounce-back type season this year. They've added, they've given him a couple of weapons they put around him. VJ down there. Mike Williams has always been a strong receiver. I just think his biggest problem has always been the guy getting him the ball. So I really do hope that he can come back because, someday I'd really like to be able to visit Florida again. And as of right now, the Dade County Police just won't let me near.
Well, if you listened last year, I was down on Tampa's offense. They had a ridiculously easy schedule the year before, and that's what gave them the surprising results that everybody saw. But I do like them this year. I love Greg Schiano as the coach. I love the new rushing game with Doug Martin added in there. Love the addition of Vincent Jackson. I think this is a team moving back in a positive direction. And you know what? I like Josh Freeman this week. He's probably 15th on my list overall, so he's not going to be a starter in 12-team leagues. But you can start Jackson, you can start Williams as your third wide receiver, and you definitely have to be starting Doug Martin in the running game because the Chiefs or the Panthers passing defense or rushing defense is no great shakes. So get your Tampa players in there. Don't be shy. Don't be put off by last year. I think you can get a lot of value.
And then we've got 3 primetime games this weekend, and we're actually going to do this a little bit backwards. I'm going to touch on the first 2, the Monday night games of this year. We have 2 of them. They're both divisional rivalries, and the earlier one being 7 o'clock Eastern time will be the Cincinnati Bengals in Baltimore. And all I can say is, wow, whenever you get 2 teams from this division meeting up, somebody's leaving with a black eye, somebody's leaving with a limp, maybe for life. And what a great hard-hitting game.
I got one very simple thing to say about this Ravens-Cincinnati game.
Sure.
Ray Rice's line for the 2 games, 295 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns, 51 yards receiving, 7 receptions.
Wow, that reads like a Harlequin love novel.
If you like the Ravens, like I do, and you drafted Ray Rice, which I didn't get a chance to do this year, start Ray Rice. He is going to be a beast in this game. Cincinnati Bengals defense has improved, but not enough to stop Ray Rice. On the offensive side, or on the passing side of the ball, Joe Flacco is not yet startable in the NFL as a fantasy option. However, Torrey Smith,
even with Torrey Smith out there,
even with Torrey Smith out there, even against the Panthers or the Bengals D, which is middle of the road, if you get distance bonuses for Torrey Smith, absolutely, you got to play him. He does seem to like the 95-yard touchdown receptions. Last year, he got 103 yards receiving against the Bengals, so. They like to look at him, and, there really is no tight end to catch the ball here. That's Ray Rice's job for the short yardage stuff. So it's the Torrey Smith show. Anquan Bolden is a distant second option.
For the Bengals, I really do like Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. I'm glad that he's actually on a team that may actually give him the opportunity to run the ball because we all know in New England they just hate running backs, and I don't think he's ever been showcased and was able to shine. This isn't the week to find out what he's made of because it's going to be ugly, it's going to be stifling, and he may be the guy that's leaving with a limp this weekend because he's just going to get crushed. The middle of that defense is the heart of that defense. The linebackers in Baltimore are just crushing and bruising, and expect Ben Jarvis Green Ellis to have a really, really long day.
Yeah, Ravens rush D is second best in the league in 2011. They are without Terrell Suggs for the beginning of the year, but they're still very good against the rush. They allow about half a touchdown per game rushing, which is ridiculously low. And the passing defense is very good, too. So as much as I like a lot of Cincinnati players this year, weeks when they play the Ravens and the Steelers are not the best.
No, and when you have to play them each twice, it's a tough road. It's definitely a tough road for the Bengals. and
so
the Browns for that. And the Browns for that, maybe.
We have a late night game.
Sure, we do have a late night Monday night game, and that's going to be on the West Coast, San Diego at Oakland. But again, yet another divisional rivalry type game. But there's not a heck of a lot in this game getting me excited.
Yeah, there's not a lot of sizzle in this game. Right now, Malcolm Floyd is the guy who will start in place of Vincent Brown, who we mentioned earlier in the show, is out. Phillip Rivers is a good quarterback, but he plays on a team where he's losing a lot of his weapons. Antonio Gates is yet another year older and another step slower. So not a lot that I like in the passing game there. And the rushing game, well, it's injury riddled. They are starting Ronnie Brown, and that's great if it's 2007. It's not so good if it's 2012. So I think we got to come out of the Wayback Machine and really dial back San Diego's expectation. Most years you would say San Diego wins this game. I think Oakland wins this game. They have a better rushing game. They have a better passing game. They've got an improving defense, and they've got 3 injured wide receivers out there. So
and they don't have Al Davis stifling them.
They don't have Al Davis stifling them. I think their offensive coordinator is somebody that out-fired a few years ago, so they don't have to worry about hiring back the good guys. McFadden is a must-start in this game. The Chargers' rush defense is below average, and McFadden, in my opinion, talent for talent, is the second best running back in the NFL. If only the guy could stay healthy. So this is a must start for him. It's a considered start for Darius Hayward-Bay, and you might even consider the Oakland D if you're desperate.
Well, and unfortunately, we saved what we considered to be the best game for last, and we're just about out of time. So unfortunately, we're going to wind up running through this game with all the interesting storylines, from the return of Manning to the Mike Wallace holdout to the playoff implications that this game had last year, and all of those wonderful things. The Sunday night game, Denver and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and wow, I don't what.
My co-host
what do you expect
from
this game?
In case you folks couldn't tell, my co-host is a Steelers fan. For those listening for the first time, this is a very good game, and it really is a matchup between a couple great quarterbacks in Roethlisberger and Manning. Manning, of course, coming back from the year off because of injury last year. Roethlisberger dogged by injury concerns of his own with the rotator cuff this year. As much as there's interest in this game, it's a wait-and-see game for a lot of players. You can't depend on the Steelers' running game because Rashard Mendenhall is coming back and Isaac Redman is tweaked up, so Jonathan Dwyer looks like he might get the start. And the Broncos' rushing game is full of turmoil all the time, too. Willis McGahee looks like he's a starter, but they're hoping for good things out of Hillman. And, that one's another one. Noshawn Moreno waits in the wings there. So muddled situations rushing the ball. Why don't you give us a little bit on the passing game for the Steelers, and I'll close it out with the Broncos.
Sure, absolutely. And again, I may be a little bit biased here because, yes, I am a Steelers fan, but can anybody out there tell me that there's a better receiving trio than Mike Wallace, Antonio Brown, Emmanuel Sanders? I mean, they've all got talent. They're all young. They're all fast. It's exciting. And being a Steelers fan and watching them pound the rock and hit it with those big running backs for years and years and years, watching the way that they've evolved, and I'm really psyched to see what happens this year. I'm a little bit concerned with the new offensive coordinator. I think he wants to get back to that old power style Pittsburgh football. I just don't think we're built for that right now. So I think it's going to be a happy balance, and I just really cannot wait for this season to start so I can start watching these guys.
Well, I'm going to tell you, as a fantasy football player for 25 years, almost 24, seeing Peyton Manning come back to football this year has got to be one of the more interesting things that I've been able to watch, and I'm dying to see how he comes out of the gate. Certainly setting a high bar. The Pittsburgh D is a solid one, and they remain solid in 2012. But the Broncos have a very solid pair of receivers. Demaryius Thomas is extremely fast, probably one of the faster guys that Manning's ever had the chance to play with. And Manning's developed a very nice rapport with Eric Decker, the number 2 receiver out there, and he's more the possession style guy. So he's got some good weapons. He's got his familiar Jacob Tamme at tight end. He's got all the pieces he needs. The offensive line is what scares me for the Broncos, and I'm curious to see how they stand up to that Pittsburgh defense. But you have to start basically everybody wearing orange this week.
Absolutely.
Manning, both receivers, and McGahee, and even the Broncos defense, which I'm sure you're not going to be excited to hear, but with them down to the third running back option and Ben Roethlisberger having lost a little bit of velocity on the ball.
And Mike Wallace coming back after a haul out.
Yeah. Well, no, but the Wallace thing is less important. Denver is a ball-hawking defense. They love to go after fumbles and interceptions, and both of those conditions, Jonathan Dwyer and Roethlisberger's bum arm, could give them opportunities to really, score on a turnover, which is something that's great when you get it out of your defense. So, Broncos have some upside as a defense to start this week.
Cool. Well, Professor, once again, I want to thank you for a great show. I always love talking football with you. It's great. Football's here, week 1. I can't wait to come back next Wednesday and we can, see if we were right on any of these predictions and start talking about next week's predictions and start talking about week 2. So it's been a fun show, and I'm looking forward to a great weekend of football.
Same here. I'm ready for some football. It's time. Bring it on, baby.
Amen. All right, folks. Thanks for listening to the Piccalilli Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. Again, I am your host, JB, the Fantasy Phenom. With me was the Professor, and we will be back next week. Thank you for your continued support.